representing my colleagues and all the Tibetans, I extend my greetings to all of you who have been supporting the Tibet issue for a very, very long time. In fact, I think you all know much more about Tibet, so maybe we don't have to talk about all the basics. What we have been doing as a parliament is to reach out to other parliamentary members, and every 2-3 years we organize, as you know, what we call as the World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet. The first one being in 1994 in Delhi, then second in 95 in Lithuania, 97 in United States, Washington, D.C. Then 2005 we had after a long gap, we had one convention in Edinburgh. Then the 2009 in Rome, 2012 in Ottawa. And next year, before I leave the post of the speaker, we will be organizing the 7th World Parliamentarians Convention sometime next year, in the middle of next year in Europe. And now that the European Parliament election has happened, they took some time in choosing the speaker or the president of the European Parliament, and then the holidays happened. After the holidays, then we will be forming the Tibet intergroup in the European Parliament, and the European Parliament will be one of the co-hosts for this convention, for the next convention. And along with this, we have been visiting quite a number of countries, me as speaker individually, and also parliamentary delegations to different countries, particularly in Europe. We just last few months, we had sent delegations to Japan, and now we are here. So we have been trying to reach out as much as possible. Of course, limited by the financial and human resource constraint that we go through. And in Australia, I find that the political leadership is not very, very strong in handling China. Just yesterday we had a meeting with our Chinese friends, about 35, 40 of them, and it was a very intensive meeting for about 3 hours. We exchanged our views. I was told by the Chinese professors, one from Perth, that Confucius institutions have been mushrooming all along, but it's not the same situation as how Confucius institutions are established in other countries, particularly in North America and in Europe. Here, the money or the grant that comes from the Chinese government is not that much. In one university, it was only about $170,000, which is nothing much, but the professor was of the view that the Australian government, it's a move by the Australian government to please the Chinese. So that's the understanding I got from the Chinese perspective who are serving here. And some of those who are very vocal about human rights issues in Tibet, or pro-democracy activists, academics are also targeted by the Chinese government along with the administration here to sideline them in some way or the other. So these are certain things we see here. And of course, when parties are in opposition, they are very much like a little more vocal than when they are in the government. So anyway, we have to work with your support. Australia Tibet Council, of course, has been doing a lot of work lobbying with political leaders, and I'm sure you all as members and supporters are also involved in meeting with the leaders and talking about the Tibet issue. So overall, in Tibet today, I'm sure you all know about this, Tibet is still cut off from any diplomatic or journalist access. By listening to experts, we are made to understand that the freedom of press overall in China in the last 2 years during President Xi Jinping's time there has been a lot more tighter control. Particularly Tibet Autonomous Region is the red zone, and other Tibet regions and Uyghur are on the second zone, where it's very difficult to have access. But we have met people who have been to Tibet in the last 1 or 2 years in Europe. Some of them have been able to go to Mansarovar and also travel to the other parts of Tibet Autonomous Region, to Lhasa. And they are of the view that the military surveillance and monitoring has increased tremendously, both people in military gear as well as in civil dress. So surveillance has definitely increased. Therefore, for Tibetans to organize protests or any kind of political action in Tibet Autonomous is very, very difficult. Even those people Tibetans who come from outside Lhasa, if they have to stay in Lhasa, then they have to either stay in a hotel where their identity and everything is washed, and then if they are staying with a family, and in case if they get involved in any political activity, the family where they stay also gets arrested. So that is the kind of situation. And in Tibet Autonomous Region, Chinese government had sent about 60,000 workforces at the village level to monitor Tibetans. So that is more like saying one workforce for 50 Tibetans or so, so that is the level of monitoring. And since the Communist Party has lost many of the competencies that they used to exercise in the urban areas, particularly in China, the control on the minority regions are increasing. And now they have also set up what is called as advanced families, a group of families. Then they are supposed to maintain stability within the community. In Lhasa proper, of course, CCTVs are now everywhere. Lhasa has become, now it's almost one Tibetan to, the ratio between Chinese and Tibetans is 1:4. So that is the level of demographic aggression that's happening. And in the name of development and with the policy of assimilation that they have been following in the last 5-6 decades, a lot of developments are happening. I met one of our friends in Italy who had been visiting Tibet for the last 25 years, and he had been to many different regions. They organized a lot of projects. And I think Australian government also supported one project of theirs. And I was told that the Australian ambassador was taken only to that project site and not anywhere else. So the rapidness of developmental activities, particularly on infrastructure, has been enormous. It's astounding, in fact. But overall in China also, if you compare China with any of the developed countries, what China has done in the last 2-3 decades is immeasurable. It's not comparable with any of the developed countries, including the United States. So the roads projects in Tibet are going, not just in Tibet Autonomous Region, but other regions of Tibet also. Road projects are very, very rapid. Now the railway link from Kormor to Lhasa has been linked to Shigaze already, and they are planning to link it to Kathmandu if the political situation is good. And we don't know when they will complete, maybe another 5, 6, 10 years. The 2 other road projects the railway project from Lanchao, in Chinese they call Lanzhou, to Lhasa, and from Chengdu to Lhasa. If those two railways gets connected to Lhasa through Kongbo, then much of Tibet will be linked by railroad. Then airfields, particularly for military, has increased a lot, and public usage airfields have also now come up in number of places. So those infrastructure developments are definitely not aimed for the benefit of Tibetans, that's for sure. And with these infrastructure development, a lot more Chinese are moving into Tibet. Majority of the cities and towns, the Chinese have become majority over the Tibetans, and now they have started moving to the rural areas. So that is the general scenario. And according to Chinese leadership, any conflict or any problem can be resolved by development. So that is their only answer. And development for whom and why, we all know. And of course, it's causing now serious problems with the locals, with the road projects and mining projects. There are severe problems. We have been witnessing in the last 1 year alone, a lot of confrontation between local Tibetans and the authorities regarding mining projects, regarding dam projects where people are being displaced, regarding road projects where they make roads through sacred places where Tibetans consider as sacred. So confrontations are increasing all the time. Now this leads not only to huge demographic change in the whole region, starting from east and now also major cities, and now next the villages. The only places where you can find little pieces of Tibetan identity are the rural areas now. So slowly, Tibetan identity is being extinguished or annihilated, and therefore we don't have much time. Now on political matters, it still remains very grim, very serious. Now, of course, in the last few months, we have no more cases of self-immolations. It still remains 130. But any sense of conventional form of protests are met with repression. We had ICT had also come out with this report on how Chinese government criminalizes the relatives of those who self-immolated, and people who have just witnessed the self-immolations are also being targeted. It's a comprehensive report. You can go on the ICT website and also look at individual cases of repression or arrest, sentences, torture, and all that. And now people who have completed their prison terms are sometimes being released, but their health conditions are so bad that it's very difficult for them to continue with their normal life when they are released from prison. So any form of political, even a single tone in terms of lyric in a song, then those singers are arrested, and when they are let out, they are no more allowed to sing. Writers, scholars, so any person of Tibetan origin who has some influence on the general population are targeted, including environmentalists. So those things continue to be there unabated. Then on religious freedom, it's still the same. The numbers are decreasing, and people who join monasteries, they have to criticize His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You still find pictures of Deng Xiaoping and Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, Hu Jintao, and Jiang Zemin, along with Buddhist statues in the monasteries. Monasteries and schools are forced to put up Chinese flags, because of which there were confrontations. In Diu alone this year, there were thousands of Chinese workforces came and they were forced to put up Chinese flag, and then there was confrontation. So monasteries are under strict, very, very strict surveillance. Now they have put CCTVs in most of these, what they call as sensitive monasteries. Chinese government wants to be responsible for recognition of lamas, reincarnation of lamas. So, of course, they don't believe in religion. His Holiness always humorously remarked that first they have to learn Buddhism to understand what reincarnation is all about. And then if they really want to recognize reincarnations, then they should look for Mao Zedong's reincarnation first. And then maybe the Dalai Lama's later, you know. So, and for monks and movement of monks and nuns have been severely restricted. Traditionally, monks from Kham and Amdo come to Lhasa to study in the 3 great monasteries, and then they go back and disseminate and, you know, work in their own, do preachings in their own monasteries and in the surrounding areas. But now it's very difficult. You cannot go beyond a designated territory. And even if they have to travel far, they have to get too many passes, at least 4 or 5 different passes. Even with those passes, you have to be very, very careful. And at all those checkposts, before you reach any major city, monks and nuns are more, how do you put it? They are searched more than others. Put up rules and regulations to study Buddhism. And the monastic management committees, earlier it used to be monks from that monastery. Now they've put up, they have included public security bureaus and other authorities in the monastic management committees. They are also trying to form Communist Party branches in monasteries and nunneries. So it's getting more and more serious on those matters. On environmental issues, just a few days back, the Chinese Science Academy and the government of Tibet, what they called as government of Tibet, had come out with a report. I'm sure you can check on their website. And the report seems to be quite forthcoming in their view of the the criticality of the Chinese Tibetan environment. The rise in temperature on the Tibetan plateau is 0.4 degrees over the last 10 years, which is double the average of the world global warming standards. And in the last 10 years alone, 1/10 of Tibetan glaciers and permafrost have melted, because of which lakes have increased by 14%. So these have serious consequences, not just on Tibet, but also in China and all the riparian countries, whether it be Pakistan or India, Burma, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and China. And they are building so many dams, including one major project which they may implement if this plan has been long in the running since the 60s. They are trying to divert Brahmaputra at this area called the Big Bend. And they want to build a dam that is bigger than the Three Gorges Dam. And the whole Tibetan plateau is seismic zone, highly prone to earthquakes and other natural disasters. Just before coming here, Dharamsala also had a 4.9 degree earthquake. So if something happens to a huge project like Three Gorges or a similar project which they might come up by using atomic energy or small nuclear devices. Because it's not easy to divert river from south to north, because north of China is perched and they need more water. But for us, it looks like an impossible job. Just like when they were planning to build the Koromol-Lhasa railway, we thought it's impossible to build railways over permafrost that where it goes up and down by 5 meters, but they did it. It's running today. So for China, anything big, starting from the Great Wall, has never been an impossibility. They might do it, who knows. But all the riparian countries are suffering. On Irrawaddy alone, we are talking about 30, 40 dams. And on Brahmaputra now, they're planning more and more dams. So at every level. And they don't share any hydrological data with any of the riparian countries. So eventually, this will have serious consequences. We sometimes jokingly say that today we are political refugees, but tomorrow there will be so many environmental refugees. And the neighboring countries are not able to wake up to the reality or be able to speak up their mind to the Chinese government. In India now we see a little difference. In the last 1-2 years, now they have started giving a little more attention to the Brahmaputra. Just before coming here, one of our friend, a former military general who's now an expert on security issues and environmental issues, he gave a talk in Delhi. And he was saying that if China does build this dam bigger than the Three Gorges on the bend of the Brahmaputra, then what could be the consequences? It could be 100 times more than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation that can take place, because the downstream areas are so highly densely populated areas. And Bangladesh, they are not able to speak up because they have a defense pact with China. Burma also the same case. Aung San Suu Kyi is still not very happy. I was there when she met with His Holiness last year in UK, and she expresses a lot of reservation about what's happening in Burma. Maybe small steps in the right direction, but she always says we have to be very, very cautious about what's happening. And next year would be something to watch out for, because there will be elections, but I think till there is change in the constitution, she will not be able to stand for the presidentship of Burma. And there also situation is more tilted towards China. And from a geopolitical or geostrategic point of view, maybe I'll come to that later, maybe cover it a little bit on the geostrategic part. But from environmental point of view, it's having serious impact, and it's coming now directly from Chinese scientists. They are the one who coined Tibet as the third pole, because it has the largest amount of glaciers and permafrost other than North Pole and South Pole. So Tibetan Plateau, which covers about 5 million square kilometers, out of which 2.5 million square kilometer is what we call as the Tibetan territory. So there, any damages to it concerns not only Tibet or China, but the whole region. Severe implications. Then, what else? We have now been following this middle way approach, and I know many foreigners, supporters, many non-Tibetan supporters think that Tibet should get independence. And I have no problem with that, but we know the reality, what's happening inside Tibet, and we have to find a way. The Tibetans will have to find a way. Even within the Tibetan community also we have people who support independence, but if you look at the reality, whether you go for independence or whether you go for middle way, you cannot get it without talking with the Chinese leadership. That's a reality. And the reason, of course, why we reach out to non-Tibetans is because if we can push this process a little further. That's the reason why we reach out to the international community. And the reality, or the other reality is that, of course, we have consistently been following non-violent means. And if we follow violence also, that's very much against our basic philosophy of Buddhism. And the reality is also that we cannot fight with the Chinese and win. And we can't expect the United States to fight for Tibet just like they did in Iraq or Afghanistan, when they could not do in the 50s. And today, it's a totally different dynamic. A whole paradigm shift in the past power positions in the world. So we continue to believe in the middle way approach. We find nothing wrong with the middle way approach, except that China lacks political will to resolve the Tibet issue. During the last 8 rounds of dialogue, 9 rounds of dialogue, we are sure that Chinese government completely understand our position. But then since there is no political will, they come up with impossible conditions, saying that the Dalai Lama should say that Tibet was historically a part of China. And we cannot rewrite history. And His Holiness Dalai Lama always says, I'm not an historian. So history, I think, is best left to historians. So what we are talking about is the future of Tibet and its relation with China. So, and the danger now is when the Tibetan identity is being destroyed. Forget about independence. Another 20, 30 years down the line, if we are not able to go back with a genuine autonomy that we are asking for, then even autonomy may not make sense when Tibet is overpopulated by Chinese, and then Tibetans will have Tibet, the Tibet towns in Tibet overpopulated by Chinese. So that is the danger. And with those realities in mind, we consistently follow that. But right now, even Xi Jinping, now he is too busy with anti-corruption drive, which is very widespread. Even now it has come to Tibet also. So we find that all the officials are now very, very careful. Now nobody is organizing any dinners or lunches. Everybody is very careful. Now they have given a number. So the anti-corruption drive is going very, very strong. And some believe that Xi Jinping is now sitting on a knife's edge. And when I talked with the Chinese intellectuals last night, they were saying that these are just struggle for power. Remove everybody that comes in his way, including some very top leaders. He has done that, he has shown that. Now how far can he go? Because here are people believe that even he himself is not very free from corruption. Forget about others. So everybody, almost all the leaders, Chinese leaders, are corrupt in a way. So now whom he targets whom, and how things happen, now what shape it will take, and what will be the nature of the power struggle. And now it's believed that Jiang Zemin, he is not touched by Xi Jinping, and some of the experts believe that if Jiang Zemin had quietly agreed not to do anything to protect his people, then he may be left alone. So in that case, if Jiang Zemin's position goes down, then Xi Jinping will have so much power, as much as Mao had. Some believe now he had already taken Deng Xiaoping's power. Even Deng Xiaoping didn't hold official positions. Now he holds all the official positions. Xi Jinping, which Hu Jintao also did not had. So there are different variations in terms of analyzing his moves. Nobody can make sure what he's doing, and it's very difficult to guess what he's going to do next. Some believe that if once he consolidates all his powers and put his people in various positions, then he might be in a position to take some stronger steps, including minority issues like Tibet and Uyghur. But it's very difficult. You see these stars on Chinese map, the 5 stars and all that. One is supposed to be Tibet, and Uyghur and Mongolia and Manchu. Manchu is now gone. There are hardly people who speak Manchu language. So maybe it's time to remove 1 star already. And then in Mongolia, it's 80% Han Chinese and 20% Mongolians. And there also the struggle is almost gone. In Uyghur and Tibet, 50-50, 45, 65, 55. We don't know the exact population. Even to calculate Tibetan population is very difficult. We have to get numbers from Tibet Autonomous Region, from Qinghai Province, from Tsering, Gansu, Yunnan, all these regions. And some of these regions we are complete minorities, not even 1% of the total provincial population. So it's very difficult to gather all the numbers. So it's getting more and more difficult. And when we talk about autonomy for Tibet, even geostrategically, I believe, and I try to put forward this view that if the Tibetan issue is resolved, if Tibet gains the autonomy, Tibet had historically played the role of a buffer between China and India, the 2 most populous nations, and now the 2 most strongest developing countries. Today, if Tibet gains autonomy, we can play the bridge between India and China. There is a lot of distrust between India and China, and we enjoy 4,080 kilometers of boundary through Tibet. The Tibetan and Tibet-India border is 4,080 kilometers from Jammu Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh. And this is one of the most non-porous borders. There are hardly any trade, hardly human movement between each other, so hardly any social exchange, even though we are culturally very, very close. We got Buddhism from India. And before Chinese came in, it used to be a porous border. There was no passport, nothing. Anybody could go in and come out. And China had resolved all its boundary issues with all other neighbors except India. So Tibet, this boundary issue, now after 17 rounds of dialogues, every time they say confidence building measures and this and that, but they've never ever been able to come up with any of the anything concrete. From India's side, what they call as McMahon Line was signed between British India and Tibet when Tibet was independent in 1913-14, and it was not ratified by the Chinese representative at the second or the later stage. But China follows the McMahon boundary between Burma and China. So they don't follow the other part, but they follow this part. So there are so many, and of course the very fact that His Holiness Dalai Lama is in India and the Tibetan refugees are in India is also a thorn in the relationship between. So with genuine autonomy, if we can get to go back, we enjoy very good relation with the Indian government. We have a very transparent relation. And we can try to convince the Indian government from Chinese side, and when we get autonomy, we'll also have to start believing in the Chinese authorities. So that way we can play a role of a bridge between India and China. And because of this conflict, China is supporting Pakistan all the time. not on developmental issues, not on education and other things which are more humanitarian in nature, but always in missile technology. The initial nuclear designs were provided by China, and today China controls the Gwadar port, which is a huge military port on south of Pakistan in the province of Balochistan. It was built by a Singapore consortium, but Pakistan was too smart not to give 5 acres, which are very, very important, strategically important for that port. So later they had this dispute and it was handed over to the Chinese. And much of the fund also came from Chinese. So if there is better relations between India and China, then this Pakistan issue may also be resolved. And China need not support Pakistan with all these nuclear and weapons that kill people. Instead, if they are real good friends, they call China in Pakistan relation as all-weather friends. Hail or storm or snow or sunshine, whatever. So if that is really the case, then Pakistan needs more education, better infrastructure, better employment. Why not those? And now because of this tension also, now there's too much fight over influence in Nepal. More and more Chinese are coming. Now the downtown Nepal called Tamil has become a Chinatown in the last 5-10 years. And it's becoming more difficult for us because there is no stable political situation in Nepal. Now they have a constituent assembly who will have to adopt a constitution, hopefully in the next 1 year. There were constituent assemblies before who have not been able to adopt a constitution for Nepal. So all this political instability in Nepal is being taken advantage of by China, where India had traditionally more influence in Nepal. Then Bhutan is one country that's more closer to India. And Bangladesh was given birth by India by fighting with Pakistan. Today Bangladesh has military pact with China, so also with Sri Lanka and Maldives. So India is surrounded in what the strategists call as the pearl of strings from the Chinese side. But now lately there seem to be some kind of, according to the general who spoke before we came here, some concessions from the Chinese side to China asking India to be part of the Shanghai cooperation in this Central Asia region, and inviting India to be part of this maritime Silk Route through Indian Ocean. So those things are the reality. If the Tibetan issue is resolved and better trust between India and China is built, then I think all these issues will also become smaller. So that can bring in much more stability and security for the whole subcontinent. And I believe that China is very smart. Today's China is very smart. They keep the whole world busy by just few issues. If China really wants, they can resolve the North Korean issue single-handedly. I was told by one of our very senior leader one day, he was telling me, North Korea is actually the watchdog of China. And China, being the house owner, today is beating its own watchdog. What do you make of it? So by keeping the North Korea issue alive, they can keep Japan busy, South Korea busy, the whole European and North American countries busy with North Korea issue. So they use it as a weapon to bring it up. You don't need this 6-party, 3-party, to resolve the North Korean issue. So also with South China Sea. With South China Sea, they keep the whole Southeast Asian countries busy. So you travel to any of these Southeast Asian countries, even Australia is being impacted by the developments in South China Sea. Then for India, it's very easy. They just cross the border by 10-15 kilometers in the no man's land, and tomorrow Indian press is full of it. So that's how China keeps busy. And I was telling our US friends that China is so smart that they came up with what they call as air defense identification zone. So any plane that goes over that zone, what they self-declared, unilaterally declared zone, you have to report to the Chinese authorities. Now, when you can claim the skies, then why not the seas under it? Yeah, so these are developments that are happening. China is being now trying to be much, much more aggressive, and there is obviously definite threats to Chinese leadership. They're spending more money on internal security than external security. China is the only country that spends more money on internal security than external security, because they just don't trust their own people. So China's collapse might come out of an implosion from inside China, not necessarily an external threat. But if such things happen, then China's next move would be attack a neighboring country. So they are already building it up with Vietnam, going as close as possible to Vietnam coast for oil rigging. So creating tensions. With India, the unresolved borders. With Japan, the historical enmity. So all these are being kept alive just so that if there are domestic problems, then they can always come up with a strategy to attack a neighbor on some ground and then build up Chinese nationalism again. But the unrest in Tibet, in the whole of China, had increased now by up to 180,000 a year. So many different kind of property rights and so many different things. So these are general. I don't know how much. I'm sure you are very much aware of a lot of things, but I just wanted to give a certain perspective of my understanding of the regional situation and situation inside Tibet and what we are trying to do and what we request you to do, what you have been doing. So we remain deeply indebted to all of you, deeply grateful for all of your support, because it's very, very important. We are going through a huge social change. A lot of Tibetans are now going to West, and many are coming to Australia. Just because many Tibetans are coming here does not necessarily mean to say that you have to now back off because the Tibetans are coming in. So we need your support more than ever before. And the job, till a solution is found for the Tibetan issue, our job, particularly after the devolution of His Holiness' responsibilities, is to keep the Tibet issue alive. That is our major job. Then what happens next is something to watch out for. But till such a time, we will need many more support. Thank you very much.